The dining room fell silent. My own daughter, standing there with her arms crossed, had just said the words that would change everything forever. You'll eat after everyone else. The roast I had spent 8 hours preparing sat steaming on the table. Without a word, I picked up that heavy tray and walked straight out the front door. Hey, everyone. Before we dive into this incredible story that will make you question everything about family loyalty, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from around the world. I love connecting with viewers from every corner of the globe. My daughter said, "You'll eat after everyone else." Something broke inside me that day. Not anger or screaming, just a quiet crack like ice breaking on a frozen pond. I stared at the roast I had spent 6 hours marinating and another 4 hours cooking. I looked at the table where everyone else sat waiting. Then I picked up the heavy tray, still burning hot, and walked out the front door. Nobody followed me. I didn't hear a single gasp, just the sound of forks hitting plates and children laughing. They didn't even notice the moment that had just happened. The air outside was cold and sharp. It helped clear my head. The tray was heavy and the foil was thin against my fingers. But I didn't stop walking. I carried that roast 4 blocks to my house, being careful not to spill the juices that still bubbled at the bottom. Inside my house, everything smelled like cleaning soap and old memories. My house hadn't really been mine since my daughter Monica talked me into moving in with her last year. "It'll be so much easier," she said. "You won't have to worry about paying bills. We'll take care of everything." I should have known better. Nothing is really free in this world. Not even your own pride. I put the roast on my kitchen counter. The silence wrapped around me like a warm blanket. No loud voices, no TV screens blaring, no one asking where the salt was or complaining about the potatoes. Just me and the ticking of the old clock I hadn't wound in months. I made myself a plate, one of my old ones with tiny roses around the edge. The rim was chipped, but I loved it anyway. I cut a thick slice of roast and spooned the pan juices over it. Then I sat down at my own table. I ate slowly and carefully. The meat was so tender. The seasonings had soaked in perfectly. It might have been the best roast I'd ever made. Nobody told me it was good. Nobody interrupted me to ask for seconds. And for the first time in years, I actually tasted every single bite. When I finished eating, I washed my dish and dried it. Then I put it away in the cabinet. I sat in the chair by the window and watched the big oak trees swaying in the wind. I used to rake all those leaves every fall. Now Monica said it was too dangerous. She said I might fall and hurt myself. But she never asked if I wanted to try. She just told me not to. Monica has always been like that. Always telling people what to do. I thought about her voice, sharp as vinegar, saying, "You'll eat after everyone else." Like I was some kind of servant. Like all the years of being her mother meant nothing. All the times I fed her, washed her clothes, helped raise her kids. None of it seemed to matter. The truth is, I knew this day was coming. It just took those words to make me see it clearly. I sat by that window for a long time. I thought about all the times I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. All the times I told myself it wasn't worth fighting about. When she snapped at me in front of her husband David. When she rolled her eyes because I couldn't figure out her fancy new coffee machine. When she said, "Don't wear that dress to the party. It looks old-fashioned." When she told me I should start planning for the end, like I was a piece of spoiled fruit. I thought about my other daughter, Emma, who died 12 years ago. She was the gentle one. The one who brought me hot tea when my hands hurt. The one who called every week just to talk, even when she was tired from work. Emma left me a granddaughter, though. Her name is Sophie. Sweet, smart Sophie. She's old enough now to see through the family's fake smiles. I wondered what she would think if she had seen me walk out with that roast. Then I thought about myself, about the young girl I used to be, and the old woman I had become. I wasn't angry or bitter, just tired. Tired of living in someone else's house. Tired of being talked to like I was a burden. tired of pretending that being needed was the same thing as being loved. I stood up and went to find a pen and paper. There were things I needed to do, not just today, but soon. My name was still on the deed to this house. My savings were still in my own bank account. I still had power over my own life. I had just forgotten it. Outside, the sun was going down and the street lights started to flicker on. Somewhere across town, Monica was probably realizing the roast was gone. Maybe someone was finally asking where I was. Maybe not. It didn't matter anymore. Tonight, I would sleep in my own bed and eat my own food. I wouldn't have to answer to anyone. And tomorrow, I would start making my own decisions. Not as someone's burden, but as myself. The phone rang twice that night. I saw Monica's name flash on the screen and let it fade back to black. She didn't leave any messages. She just kept calling like the sound alone might drag me back home. It didn't work. I slept better than I had in months. The kind of deep sleep that comes when you finally stop carrying a heavy weight. I woke up with the first light like I always do. But there was no child to dress for school. No breakfast to make for people who barely looked up from their phones. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a slice of the cold roast. It tasted even better after sitting overnight. I didn't heat it up. I didn't fuss with it. I just ate it quietly while the house held its breath around me. By 8 o'clock, I had made a list. Check the bank accounts. Call the lawyer. Look through the papers Monica helped me organize last spring. Make my own decisions. The list wasn't long, but it was real. And it was mine. I pulled out the folder from the bookshelf. The one labeled House and Money. I opened it on the kitchen table. Inside were receipts from home repairs I had paid for. Electric bills that were always in Monica's name. Notes from her suggesting we make things simpler, which really meant taking control away from me bit by bit. I remembered the day she convinced me to add her name to one of my checking accounts. Just for emergencies, she said. I thought I was being smart and practical. That's how they get you, isn't it? They don't take everything all at once. They chip away until you don't even recognize what used to be yours. The next thing I did was open my email on the computer. The bank's website had been bookmarked, though I rarely used it anymore. I had let Monica handle too much of that. But not today. I reset my password and answered the security questions. Thank goodness, they were still ones I had chosen myself. There it was, my bank balance. Still there. Still mine. I wrote down a note to visit the bank in person. I wanted to look someone in the eye, not just stare at a computer screen. I wanted papers printed out and forms signed. No more shared accounts. No more convenient access for Monica. Just me, my name, my signature. This wasn't about revenge. It was about being clear on what belonged to me. I looked up from my notes and saw a photo on the refrigerator. One of the few I hadn't packed away when I moved. It showed Emma and me standing in the garden with Sophie between us. Sophie was maybe 9 or 10 years old, holding a bunch of basil she had pulled straight from the plant. We were all laughing. Not posing or pretending, just real happiness. That laugh. I hadn't laughed like that in such a long time. I picked up the phone and dialed Sophie's number from memory. It rang twice before she answered. Grandma Betty. Her voice hit me like warm sunshine. Hi, sweetheart. There was a pause. Then, are you okay? Mom said something happened last night, but she wouldn't tell me what. I smiled to myself. Something did happen. I remembered I'm still alive. Sophie was quiet for a moment, then let out a small laugh. Well, that's one way to put it. I left, I said simply. Last night, I took the roast and I left. Another pause, but no judgment in her silence. Just a slow breath. Good, she said. Good for you. I felt my throat get tight. Would you like to come visit sometime? I'll make lunch. Nothing fancy. Tomorrow, she said quickly. I mean, if that's okay with you. Tomorrow would be perfect. After we hung up, I walked through the house slowly. I hadn't really looked at it in a long time. The curtains I had sewn myself before Monica was born. The old ceramic lamp I refused to throw away. The bookshelf full of paperback novels no one ever borrowed. Everything had a place and a memory. I dusted the furniture. I polished the tables. I opened all the windows. The house seemed to breathe out with me. At noon, I went to the backyard and stood by the small garden beds. The soil was dry, but not dead. The parsley was still growing. A few orange marigolds bowed their bright heads in the sun. I touched the wooden edge of the garden bed and let my fingers rest there. Monica had told me not to bother with gardening anymore. "It's too much work for you, Mom. Just let it go." She didn't understand. You don't let go of the things that remind you who you are. You take care of them. Even if your hands shake a little. Even if your knees complain. Even if no one else notices. The phone didn't ring again that day. And that was fine with me. Emma used to say I was the strongest woman she knew. She'd say it when I fixed the washing machine myself. Or when I held my husband's hand as he took his last breath. Or when I went back to work 3 days after his funeral because someone had to keep paying the bills. It's funny how that strength becomes invisible when you get older. You stop being the woman who carried the whole family on her back. Instead, you become the woman people talk over. The one they pat on the hand and tell to sit down and stay out of the way. After my husband Walter died, I didn't fall apart. I cooked and cleaned and paid the mortgage. I worked extra hours when I needed to. Monica was 23 then, fresh out of college, eager to move out and start her own life. Emma was still in high school and stayed close to home. She always had one foot in the real world, never too caught up in big dreams to forget who raised her. Monica had drive and ambition, no doubt about that. But Emma had heart. I remember the first month after Walter's death. Monica kept saying, "You need to let someone help you." But what she really meant was, "You're not doing this the way I think you should." She moved out a month later. Said the house felt too heavy and sad. Said she needed fresh air and space. Emma stayed. She helped with bills when she could. She worked part-time after school and made me laugh when the nights got too quiet. I used to catch her sitting on the porch, talking to the stars like they were old friends. She was never in a rush to leave home. Even when Emma got married, even when she had Sophie, she always made time for me. That kind of love doesn't make noise. It just shows up. When the cancer came, Emma faced it the same way she faced everything else. Gently, but with her eyes wide open. She called me before every doctor appointment. Not because she needed advice, but because she knew I needed to hear her voice. When Emma died, Monica told me, "You have to be strong now for Sophie's sake." But her voice had no softness in it. It felt more like a homework assignment than comfort. Sophie was just 14 years old then. She moved in with Monica because I was supposedly too old to raise a teenager. I wanted to fight it. I wanted to say I could still be a mother, even if my knees ached and my hands shook some mornings. But I didn't speak up. I let it happen. Maybe that was my first real surrender. Not to old age, but to doubt about myself. The years after that passed in a blur of small compromises. I sold my car. "You don't need it anymore, Mom," Monica said. "We'll drive you anywhere you need to go." Except they never did. I stopped hosting holiday dinners. "It's easier at our place," she insisted. I stopped working in my garden. "Your back can't handle that kind of work." I stopped decorating for Christmas and Easter. "Let us do it. You just rest." Each time I gave up something, I told myself it was just practical. But being practical has a sharp edge. You only realize how deep it cuts when you try to reach for something and find it's not yours anymore. Monica isn't mean in the ways people expect meanness to look. She doesn't yell or hit. Her tools are silence, suggestions, and dismissal. She's an expert at making things seem smaller than they are. If I said something hurt my feelings, she'd blink slowly and say, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way." Like my hurt feelings were inconvenient. Like my emotions were just a misunderstanding. That's what made last night different. "You'll eat after everyone else," she said. Not with anger, but with cold efficiency. Like I wasn't part of the celebration. Like I was part of the kitchen staff. When I stood up, took that roast, and walked out, she didn't try to stop me. Not even a word. Just silence. And that told me everything I needed to know. This morning, after my tea, I opened another box I hadn't looked into in years. Inside were Emma's letters. Real letters, written by hand, sealed in envelopes, sent through the mail. Emma believed in paper. Computer screens lie, she used to say. Ink tells the truth. I read 3 of her letters. One was about Sophie's first piano recital. How nervous Sophie had been, how her hand shook before she played the first note, and how she smiled afterward like she had climbed a mountain. Another letter was just a list of things Emma felt grateful for that week. Simple things like morning coffee and the sound of rain on the roof. The third letter was harder to read. It was written after a doctor's scan showed the cancer had spread. "I'm not afraid of dying," she wrote. "I'm afraid of being forgotten." I folded that letter and held it close to my heart. "I haven't forgotten you, baby," I whispered. "I never will." I spent the afternoon writing a new letter, this one to Sophie. Not an apology or a complaint. Just a story, a slice of memory from when she was small. About the time I taught her how to make pie crust. Her tiny hands covered in flour, her face serious with concentration. I ended the letter with, "You were always paying attention to everything around you. I see that now. I just want you to know, so was I." I sealed the envelope, wrote her name on it, and placed it by the door. Tomorrow, I'd give it to her in person. There's a kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from emptiness. That was the kind filling Monica's house the morning after I left. I imagined it while I made my tea. How the children whispered over their cereal, confused about why Grandma's chair was empty. How Monica's husband David looked at her, waiting for an explanation. And how she, with all her talent for avoiding difficult conversations, probably said nothing at all. Silence is easier than admitting your mother walked out on you in front of your dinner guests, carrying the main course under her arm. I sat on my front porch with my tea, wrapped in an old sweater Emma had given me the Christmas before Sophie was born. The elbows were worn thin, and one pocket was coming loose, but it still smelled faintly of Emma's favorite vanilla lotion. I watched a squirrel run across the fence, then freeze when it noticed me watching. I smiled. I like having company. Around 10 o'clock, I heard Sophie's voice before I saw her. "Grandma Betty." I stood up too quickly and felt the familiar pinch in my right knee. "Back here, sweetheart." She came around the side of the house holding a brown paper bag. Her hair was tied up and her cheeks were pink from the cold. "I brought pastries," she said. "From that little bakery near the bookstore. The one you used to love." I almost laughed. "Used to? I still do. Come inside." We sat at the kitchen table with warm cinnamon rolls between us. Sophie poured the tea, like she had watched me do it 100 times. She probably had. She didn't ask questions at first, and I didn't rush to explain. We just ate slowly, like we had all the time in the world. "I saw Mom's face last night," Sophie said finally. "When she came back to the table, she looked empty, like she didn't expect you to actually leave." I sipped my tea. Neither did I, until I did it. "I'm glad you did," she said, looking down at her hands. "I wanted to say something, but it didn't feel like my place." "It wasn't your place," I said. "And yet here you are." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "She's not a bad person," Sophie said quietly. "But she treats you like she's doing the universe a favor. Like she expects applause for letting you exist in her house." I didn't say anything. "I know that sounds harsh," she added. "No," I said. "It sounds accurate." We sat in that quiet agreement for a while. Then she pulled something out of her bag. A set of house keys. "I made copies," she said. "For emergencies, sure. But also, so I can come over whenever I want. You know, if that's okay with you." I took the keys and felt their weight in my palm. 3 of them, One with a purple cover. Do I get a say in the keychain color? I teased. Sophie grinned. That's non-negotiable. We talked for a while longer about school, about her job at the library, about the neighbor's cat that kept getting into her apartment. She said the cat's name was Oliver and it had opinions about everything. When she left, I stood on the porch until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I went back inside, sat at the table, and held those keys a little longer before putting them in the drawer with the flashlight and my old recipe cards. I thought I'd feel lonely, but I didn't. I felt complete, like I had stepped back into a shape that had always been mine. The rest of the day passed in small, careful motions. I sorted laundry by hand, washed dishes even though there were only a few, and checked the mail even though I wasn't expecting anything. Then, late in the afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I opened my sewing box. The lid creaked like an old door. Inside were buttons, threads, fabric scraps, and old pins dulled with time. I pulled out a piece of soft yellow cotton I had bought 2 years ago, planning to make Sophie a summer dress I never started. My fingers moved slower now, but the muscle memory came back. I didn't need to finish anything today. I just needed to begin. Just remind my hands they still knew how to create, not just maintain and clean up after others. Outside, the sky turned that soft purple color it gets just before night falls. And still, the phone didn't ring. It was Sophie who first asked the question, "Do you think Mom even knows who you are anymore?" We were sitting in my living room a few days later, a pot of tea between us, sunlight coming through the lace curtains. She hadn't meant it as an attack. It was a genuine question, but it hit me like a stone thrown into still water. I stirred my tea, not because it needed stirring, but because my hands needed something to do. "I think she knows the version of me she decided to keep," I said slowly. Sophie tilted her head. "What does that mean?" "It means," I began carefully, "she remembers the woman who packed her school lunches and signed her permission slips. The one who kept her clothes clean and her room tidy. She remembers me through usefulness, through chores and routine. But not through joy. Not through the things I loved before I became a full-time mom." Sophie leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "So, what did you love?" The question was simple, but I hadn't answered it in years. "I loved dancing," I said after a pause. "Ballroom dancing, mostly. I was on a college team for 1 year before I met your grandfather. And I loved old jazz music and lemon cookies and swimming at the lake on the hottest days of summer." I stopped, surprised by the sudden tightness in my chest. "And I loved Sunday mornings when the house was quiet and I could sit by the window with a book and nobody needed anything from me." Sophie smiled softly. "I never knew any of that." "Of course you didn't. Nobody ever asked." She looked like she was about to speak, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, made a face, and turned it upside down without answering. "Your mother?" She nodded. "She's been intense lately. Keeps asking where I am and if I've talked to you. Like, she suddenly cares again. She doesn't like when things move without her permission," I said. "Control is important to her. She doesn't think she's controlling." "That's the problem," I said. "She thinks she's saving people. She thinks she's protecting the family from embarrassment and disorder and, God forbid, discomfort." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "By telling her own mother to wait until everyone else had eaten?" I shrugged. "That's the kind of comfort she believes in. Order and performance. She wants her life to look clean on the outside, no matter what problems grow underneath." Sophie shook her head. "I don't want to turn into that." "You won't," I said, reaching for her hand. "You ask questions. You show up." She squeezed my fingers gently. That afternoon, we went for a walk around the neighborhood. The air smelled like wet leaves and fireplace smoke. Sophie carried a paper bag of cookies she had picked up on the way, and we shared them as we walked. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Everything you gave up?" I thought for a while. The sidewalk was cracked under our feet. A crow called from a telephone wire overhead. I regret thinking it would be repaid, I said finally. Sophie didn't answer right away. Then she said, "That's fair." When she dropped me off later, she hugged me tighter than usual. I watched her car disappear down the road, then went back inside and locked the door. Not from fear, but from choice. I liked knowing who I was letting into my space. That night, I sat by the radio and found a station that still played jazz. Specifically, I found some old songs by John Coltrane. I closed my eyes and remembered the smell of polished dance floors, the weight of someone's hand on my waist, the excitement of turning in step with music larger than both of us. I didn't actually dance, not really. I just swayed in place. But it was enough. The next morning, Monica came to my house. I saw her through the window, standing stiff on the porch, holding something in her arms. I didn't move right away. I let her knock twice. Then I opened the door. "Hi, Mom," she said. Her voice was too bright, too fake. I nodded. "Monica." She held out a dish covered in foil. "I brought your container back. And some turkey from, well, what was left of dinner." I looked at it but didn't reach for it. "I have food," I said. Her smile cracked a little. "I just thought, why are you really here?" She bristled. "Is it so strange for me to visit my own mother?" "Yes," I said plainly. She looked past me into the house. "Sophie's been avoiding me. She's been here instead." There was a pause. Monica took a breath. "Mom, I know things have been tense, but you have to understand. There were guests that night. There were expectations. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. You just didn't care if you were. That's not fair." "No," I said, "it's not fair. But it's true." We stood there for a few seconds. The air between us was thick with things that had never been said out loud. She held out the dish again. I didn't move. "I made a roast," I said quietly. Monica blinked, confused. "What?" "I made a roast the night I left. I sat in my own kitchen at my own table, and I ate it while it was still warm." She looked confused, like she couldn't decide if I was angry or proud. "Mom, I don't need your leftovers," I said gently. Then I closed the door. I didn't lock the door after Monica left. I didn't need to. Some boundaries are stronger than locks and chains. I stood in the hallway for a moment, holding on to the quiet. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't catch. The old fear, the one that whispers, "You're being ungrateful," or "she meant well," was gone. It had dried up some time between walking out that front door and taking the first bite of roast I ate alone. Like anything dead, it no longer had power over me. Later, I wrapped the dish she brought in a kitchen towel and walked it down the street to the church donation box. They take food quietly there. No questions, no paperwork, just kind people making sure nothing goes to waste. I placed the turkey inside, left the container, and walked home without looking back. By the time I got back, the kettle was still warm. That's when I knew what I had to do next. For years, I had let Monica handle things. Bills, online accounts, renewals, and paperwork. It started small, a reminder to pay the electric bill, a suggestion to put our phone plans together. Then came the bank accounts. She convinced me to make her an authorized user on one account in case something happens. Then another account. Then the automatic payments began. School fees for her kids, part of the grocery money, even a monthly household help contribution that I never actually saw itemized anywhere. I didn't argue. I told myself I was being helpful, that families support each other, that she had done so much for me by letting me live with them. Now all I could think about was how cleverly she had built the cage around me. Not out of cruelty, exactly. Just entitlement. Quiet, subtle, and constant. I opened the drawer where I had kept my financial records before moving in with Monica. My name was still on all the accounts. The bank had changed their logo since I had last handled things myself, but the basics were the same. I called the local branch directly. "Yes, Mrs. Patterson. the young man said after confirming my identity. You're still the primary holder on the savings account and the joint checking. How can I help you today? I'd like to make some changes, I said, but I'd rather do them in person. Of course. Do you need any special accommodations? We have assisted services if. I can walk just fine. Thank you. He hesitated. We're open until 5 o'clock. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and changed into black slacks and a blue sweater. Something sturdy, something mine. I pinned my silver hair clip into place, the one Emma always said made me look sharp and confident. Then I picked up my worn leather purse, slipped my notepad inside, and walked to the corner to catch the bus. It felt good to wait at the bus stop. Normal and grounded. Nobody driving me around like I was a piece of luggage. Nobody calling to ask where I was going. Just me, out in the world, doing something for myself. At the bank, the same young man who had answered the phone greeted me at the counter. His name tag read Marcus. He smiled politely but looked slightly nervous, like I might start crying or getting confused at any moment. That's what they expect from women my age, tears or confusion. I gave him neither. I'd like to remove an authorized user from 2 accounts, I said, laying my ID flat on the counter. He blinked. Yes, of course. If you'll step into one of our offices, I'll get the forms. 10 minutes later, I sat at a polished desk, signing papers with steady hands. Would you also like to revoke online access permissions? He asked. Yes. And automatic transfers. All of them. He paused, eyes moving to his computer screen. There's a recurring transfer of $520 every month to a school tuition account. I know, I said. Cancel it. Another pause. There are also smaller ones. Subscriptions, home services, some ride-sharing charges. Do you recognize these? No. Cancel everything. He nodded and began typing. You'll receive confirmation emails later today. I handed him a new email address I had created that morning. Send them here. His fingers hesitated again. Mrs. Patterson, if I may ask, this is a significant change. Would you like us to flag the account in case someone tries to re-establish access without your consent? I looked at him directly. Yes. Flag it. When everything was finished, he stood and walked me to the door. Anything else I can do for you today? I smiled. You've already done more than you know. Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled my sweater close, but I wasn't cold. Not really. My whole body was humming. Not from excitement, but from certainty. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly whose name was on what. And that was only the beginning. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn that no one saw coming. The lawyer's office smelled like furniture polish and old paper. I had been there once before, years ago, when Walter and I made our wills after his first heart attack. The building looked the same. Narrow hallways and scuffed baseboards. But the receptionist was new, and the chairs in the waiting area were now fake leather instead of fabric. Mrs. Patterson, the receptionist smiled. You're here to see Mr. Williams. I nodded. He's expecting me. She led me down a short hallway into a small office with tall windows. The man behind the desk stood when I entered. He was grayer than I remembered, but his handshake was still firm. Betty, he said, pointing to the chair across from him. It's been a while. Yes, too long. He sat and folded his hands. What brings you in today? I didn't hesitate. I'd like to revise my will, and I want to set up a trust for my granddaughter. He blinked once. All right. There was no judgment in his voice, just calm professionalism. That was exactly what I needed. You remember Emma? Of course. I'm sorry for your loss. I nodded once. She left a daughter, Sophie. I want to ensure that whatever I have goes to her, not to my other daughter. He didn't flinch. We can do that. I also want to protect those assets while I'm still alive, I added. Sophie's young, but I trust her more than anyone else. I don't want Monica or anyone else having access to anything in my name. Mr. Williams opened a legal pad and began taking notes. We can create a living trust. You'll keep control as the trustee, but we'll name Sophie as the beneficiary. That way, when the time comes, she'll inherit without going through probate court. Good. I'd also recommend revoking any financial power of attorney that currently names Monica. Already done, I said. The bank's been notified. Her access is gone. He glanced up, his lips twitching into something between a smile and a nod of approval. I want the trust to include the house, I continued. All the accounts I still control, any investments, everything. That's doable. We'll draw up a schedule of assets and transfer ownership into the trust. You'll still live in the home and use the funds, but legally the trust will own everything. Perfect. He looked at me for a moment, pen paused above the paper. May I ask what prompted this change, Betty? I took a breath. She told me to eat after everyone else. His eyebrows furrowed, then smoothed again. He didn't need the details. That sentence was enough. I see. She's been managing things for years. Not badly, but not kindly either. I let it happen. I thought I was being helpful. But lately, I've started remembering that I'm still a person, not a duty or a wallet with legs. He made a few more notes. I don't want this to be about punishment, I added. I just want to be clear about where I stand. I want Sophie to have what I built, not what someone else gradually took away. She'll have it. The appointment took another hour. By the time we finished reviewing forms and going over details, I felt steadier than I had in months. As he slid the draft papers into a folder, Mr. Williams looked at me with quiet respect. Most people wait too long, he said, until they've already been drained dry. I waited long enough. He stood to walk me out. When everything's finalized, I'll call you. But you'll need to come in again for signatures. I'll be here. Outside, the sky had turned gray, and the air smelled like rain. I didn't rush. I walked past the pharmacy, past the bakery, past the tiny park with the old swing set. I sat on a bench under the trees and just breathed for a while. There's something strange about taking back control after giving it away for so long. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels quiet, like fixing your posture after years of slouching the wrong way. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophie. Everything okay, Grandma? I typed back. It's starting to be. Then I slipped the phone into my pocket and listened to the wind in the leaves. The papers were ready within a week. I returned to Mr. Williams' office on a Thursday morning. The sky was clear for once, sunlight pooling like gold on the sidewalks. But the wind still had bite. I wore my wool coat, the one Emma bought me the year she got her promotion at the hospital. She said it made me look like someone who doesn't ask for permission. I folded it neatly over the back of the chair in Mr. Williams' office as he laid out the documents across his desk. Here's the will revision, he began, tapping each page gently. Here's the trust agreement. Sophie is named as sole beneficiary. You're the trustee. The house, accounts, and investment funds are listed in Schedule A. He paused and picked up another document. And here is the formal revocation of financial power of attorney. I looked at the thick envelope marked Monica Patterson. It was already addressed and stamped. She'll receive a copy, he confirmed, along with the official notice. She'll have no legal standing to act on your behalf moving forward. I took the pen. My hands didn't shake. I signed every page slowly and carefully, watching the ink flow behind me like a trail I could finally see forming. When we finished, Mr. Williams gathered everything and slipped the signed documents into a large binder. That's it, he said. You're no longer operating under assumption or habit. Everything's legally yours again. I nodded. Good. There is one more thing, he said, opening a small drawer. Do you want to include a medical directive? Someone to speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. I didn't hesitate. Sophie. She's under 30, he warned gently. That's fine by law, but emotionally. She's the only one who still asks what I want. He nodded and slid the form across the table. We finished in under 20 minutes. When I stood to leave, Mr. Williams offered me the binder. Keep this somewhere safe and let Sophie know where it is. I will. And Betty, I turned. You're not just taking back your things. You're protecting them. There's a difference. I nodded. That's exactly what I'm doing. I took the long way home. I passed Monica's neighborhood and didn't turn in. I passed the school where Sophie once played violin in a third-grade concert. I passed the hardware store where Walter used to buy screws he didn't need just to chat with the owner. When I reached my house, I felt it in a new way. Not as a burden or a museum, but a shelter. A stronghold. Mine. I placed the binder in the drawer with the emergency flashlight and the spare checkbook. Then I sat at the kitchen table and wrote Sophie a letter. Not dramatic or emotional, just practical instructions. Where the binder was who to call, what to do if and when. When I finished, I tucked the letter into an envelope and wrote her name in block letters across the front. Then I placed it under the old cookie jar, the one she always lifts when she visits, as if I might have left something sweet inside. I stood by the window for a while, sipping tea and watching the late autumn light shift across the yard. The phone rang once, then again. I let it go. 5 minutes later, a text came through from Monica. We need to talk. It's important. I deleted it without reading any further. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I pulled out my calendar and started making lists. Not lists of chores, but lists of things I wanted. A new pair of walking shoes. A small raised garden bed for spring. A trip, just a weekend somewhere with water nearby. Not big things, not fancy things. Just mine. That night, for the first time in years, I locked the door from the inside. Not out of fear, but as a quiet statement. I was home. Monica didn't knock this time. She rang the bell once, then again, sharper, longer. I waited, finishing my tea. When I opened the door, she stood stiffly on the porch, arms crossed, face tight with anger. We need to talk, she said. I didn't move aside. About what? Her eyes narrowed. Don't play dumb, Mother. You've revoked everything. I got the letter from the lawyer about the trust and the will. You cut me out entirely. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Then you already have your answer. She brushed past me into the living room, uninvited. She always walked like the house owed her its walls. Why now? She asked, spinning to face me. Why, after all this time? You lived under my roof for over a year, and suddenly I'm the villain. I sat in my chair by the window, calm. I don't live under your roof anymore. You stayed there for free, she snapped. We took care of you. No, I said. I cooked. I cleaned. I picked up your children from school. I paid for half your bills. That wasn't care. That was an arrangement. And I don't do arrangements that erase me. Monica blinked. For a second, her mouth moved but made no sound. She hadn't expected clarity. She had come prepared for guilt. You're being dramatic, she said finally. No, I'm being exact. She started pacing. You're going to leave everything to Sophie. She's 24 years old. She doesn't know anything about managing money. She'll learn. I should have been part of that conversation. You should have been, I interrupted. You had years. Years to treat me like a person, not a burden. You didn't. Monica stopped pacing. I didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't care if you did. She flinched, but I held her gaze. All these years, I said quietly, you thought I wouldn't notice. You told me when to speak, when to sit, when to eat. You dressed it up as concern, but it was always control. She crossed her arms again, defensive now. I was trying to keep things manageable. For who? Her silence told me everything. After a while, she sat down across from me. Her voice softened. You could have said something sooner. I did. You didn't hear it. Or maybe you did and ignored it. Her jaw tightened again. You made me out to be some cold monster. I didn't make you anything. I just stopped lying about how it felt. She exhaled hard and rubbed her forehead. So that's it. You're just done with me? I looked at her, my daughter, a woman I had fed and clothed and protected, and I felt no hatred, just exhaustion. No, I said gently. I'm not done with you, but I'm done living under your conditions. She didn't speak after that. We sat in silence for a long time, the afternoon sun painting sharp lines across the floor. Finally, she stood. Do you want me to go? I nodded. I do. Monica looked like she might say more, but then she turned, walked to the door, and let herself out. The door shut quietly behind her. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt space, the kind that used to belong to me, the kind I had forgotten how to breathe in. Later that evening, Sophie called. How are you? She asked. Better, I said. Clearer. She paused. She came by, didn't she? Yes. Did it help? I thought for a moment. It helped me remember that boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. Sophie didn't say anything, but I could hear the warmth in her breath. Good, she whispered. That's good. We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. Sometimes it's not about what you say. It's about finally being heard. But that's not where the story ends. Because sometimes life has a way of bringing unexpected people into your world, right when you need them most. The next few days came with noise. Not the kind you hear, but the kind that fills your phone. Missed calls. Voicemails with polite urgency. Texts that started with "Mom, I think we should talk," and ended with "This has gone too far." Some from Monica, a few from her husband David, who never used to speak to me directly unless something needed fixing. The messages blurred together after a while. Apologies wrapped in expectations. Worry disguised as control. Underneath them all was a single thread. They were losing access, and they didn't know how to function without it. I didn't answer. It wasn't revenge. It was space. I left my phone on the kitchen counter and spent mornings on the porch with a blanket and a book. I would reread the same paragraph 4 times, not because I couldn't focus, but because I liked the rhythm of the words. I had forgotten how books felt in your hands, how they changed the texture of time. Around noon each day, I would walk, not far, just through the neighborhood, past the hardware store, past the post office, where Mr. Duncan still flirted shamelessly despite being 94 and nearly deaf. Sometimes I would pick up lemons or fresh bread. Sometimes I would buy nothing at all, just to remember what it felt like to move freely through a place without purpose. The house stayed warm. I baked for myself in small batches. 2 muffins, not 12. 1 pot of soup, not enough to feed an army. I ate at the table, not in front of a screen, not standing by the sink, and always from a real plate. That mattered to me. On the 3rd evening, the doorbell rang. Not Monica, not David. It was Tyler, Sophie's younger cousin, Monica's son. He was 18 now, all long limbs and nervous energy. He held a paper bag and wouldn't look me in the eye. Mom made me bring this, he said, thrusting the bag forward. It's some food, I think, and a card. I took it, more for him than for myself. You want to come in? He hesitated, then nodded. Inside, he stood awkwardly in the hallway while I set the bag on the counter and peeked inside. Chicken in plastic containers. A slice of pie. The card was unsigned. Tyler cleared his throat. I think she's scared. Of what? Of not being forgiven. I nodded. And you? He shrugged. I'm just confused. You were always there. Now you're not. That's what happens when people stop seeing you. He looked down at his sneakers. Sophie says you're not mad. That you're just tired. I am. He nodded again. I liked it when you lived with us. Even if Mom always made it seem like you were in the way. I smiled. Thank you. He looked around the house, taking in the photos and the quiet. It's different here. It smells like real. That made me laugh. That's probably the onions. He grinned. Before he left, he paused by the door. Are we still family? I looked at him. So young, still growing into his voice. Always, I said. But family and boundaries aren't enemies. He frowned. What does that mean? It means you're allowed to say no to people you love. Oh. He stood there for a second longer, then stepped forward and hugged me. Awkward and quick, but real. After he left, I sat at the table with a card. No signature, no note, just a blank interior with one printed word on the front. Sorry. It didn't feel like enough. But I wasn't waiting for it to be. That night, I didn't turn the phone off. I just turned the volume down. The sound of my own breathing was enough. Monica waited a full week before trying again. This time it came by mail. A pale blue envelope, her handwriting on the front. She always had neat script, sharp and slanted, like she was still trying to impress a teacher. I opened it at the kitchen table, knife sliding easily through the fold. Inside was a card with gold trim, the kind people send for holidays or polite condolences. No emotion, just elegance. The message inside was short. Let's start fresh. Come for dinner. Sunday. Just family, just us. Love, Monica. I read it twice. Then I placed it back in the envelope and set it aside. I didn't need time to think. I already knew the answer. When Sunday came, I didn't go. I didn't call. I didn't explain. I simply made my own dinner. Roasted carrots, a piece of fish, rice with lemon zest. And I ate it by the window as the sky went soft and golden. Around 7, the phone rang. Monica. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I picked up. Her voice was clipped, too steady. You got the card. Yes. We waited for you. I know. I made the lamb. Your recipe. I stirred my tea. That's nice. She exhaled sharply. Are you punishing me? No, I said. I'm declining. She didn't understand. I could hear it in the silence. It's just dinner, Mom. It's never just dinner with you. A pause. I'm trying to make things right. No, I said. You're trying to reset everything back to how it was. Back to what was comfortable for you. But I'm not playing anymore. Her voice cracked just slightly. Sophie says you've changed. She's right. I don't know what you want from me. Nothing, I said. That's the point. Silence stretched long between us. Then, in a smaller voice, she said, I miss you. I believe you. More silence. But I won't go back, I added. I won't sit at a table where I'm asked to earn my place. I won't trade my presence for permission. Her voice hardened. You think you're better than us now? No, I said. I think I finally remember I matter. She didn't respond. And I didn't fill the gap. Eventually, she said, I don't know what else to do. You don't have to do anything, I said gently. Just stop expecting me to return to who I was when I forgot myself. She ended the call. Not with anger, just with a kind of finality. A door she didn't know how to open and wasn't ready to walk through. I sat there a long time listening to the quiet. Not lonely, not triumphant. Just still. Later, I opened the drawer, took out the blue envelope, and tore it in half. Then again and once more. The scraps fluttered into the trash like dried petals. I went to bed early. No dreams, just rest. And in the morning, I woke without dread. Now here's where something beautiful and unexpected happened. I signed a lease on a Tuesday. It was a small apartment, 2 rooms and a kitchen on the second floor of a quiet building near the park. Nothing grand, nothing polished, but the windows faced east and the morning light poured in like honey. That mattered more than granite countertops ever could. The landlord, Mr. Garcia, was kind. He helped carry boxes up the narrow stairs and showed me where the electrical panel was, just in case. When I asked about painting the kitchen cabinets, he shrugged and said, As long as you don't pick black, I trust you. I chose soft green. Sophie helped me settle in. We made a day of it, unpacking slowly, drinking iced tea from mismatched mugs, and laughing when we found things I didn't even remember owning. She hung a small framed print above the sink, a lemon tree, soft and faded. "It looks like you," she said. "Rooted, but still growing." I smiled. That's nicer than being called sturdy. We spent the afternoon arranging bookshelves. Emma's letters went into a wooden box that now lived on the side table, close enough to touch. By evening, Sophie had to leave. Before she did, she placed a plant, a trailing pothose, on the windowsill. "Every woman needs a plant," she said. "It's proof you can still nurture something." After she left, I sat on the couch and listened to the new quiet, different from the silence in Monica's house. This one didn't press against me. It welcomed. It asked nothing. I made a simple dinner. Sautéed spinach, a boiled egg, toast. I ate it slowly, watching shadows climb the opposite wall. No one asked why there weren't more side dishes. No one criticized the softness of the yolk. The next morning I met my neighbor. Her name was Ruth, 85 years old, and she walked with a cane covered in flower stickers. "You're the new one," she said, eyeing me like a shopkeeper examining fresh produce. "I suppose I am." She nodded toward my door. "Don't put out trash before 5. They fine us. And the lady in 2B feeds the squirrels, but don't tell management. I like her too much to see her evicted." I smiled. "Thanks for the warning." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You divorced?" "No, widowed." She tilted her head. "Then what brings you here?" I didn't hesitate. I remembered I'm allowed to live on my own terms. Her lips twitched. "Well, it's about time." We stood in the hallway talking for 20 minutes about arthritis, old movies, and which grocery store had the best produce. She reminded me a little of myself, sharp when she needed to be, but kind underneath. A woman who had weathered more than she let on. That afternoon, I rearranged the silverware drawer. Not because it was wrong, just because I could. I placed forks in the front, knives at the back. It made no logical sense, but it pleased me. Later, I took a walk around the block. Just once, enough to feel the air on my skin, enough to feel like part of the day. When I returned, there were no expectations waiting for me. Just the warm hum of the heater, just the lemon tree above the sink, just me in my space with no one asking what I was doing there. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was visiting my own life. The envelope was cream-colored and addressed in wide, loopy handwriting. I nearly tossed it with the advertisements and coupon flyers. Only the return address stopped me, Helen Martinez. I hadn't heard that name in over 30 years. We had lived 2 houses apart when the girls were little. She had twin boys, both loud and fast, always tracking mud through her kitchen. We used to sit on her back steps, drinking coffee while the kids turned the backyard into a war zone. She smoked cigarettes and wore her hair in a long braid down her back. She moved away after her husband got transferred to Colorado. We promised to write. We didn't. I opened the letter at the kitchen table, already steeping tea. The paper was thick, the ink a little faded. "Betty," it began, "I saw your name in the church bulletin. They said you had spoken at a memorial fundraiser for Emma last spring. I couldn't believe it. I'm sorry it took me so long to find the right words, but when I saw your name again, I knew I had to reach out." She remembered Emma, remembered her laugh, remembered her drawing pictures on the sidewalk with chalk and insisting they were inventions. She wrote about her boys, one now a teacher, the other working as a park ranger. She had grandkids, a dog, a new hip. She said she was slower now, but not done yet. Then, near the end, "I still remember the woman who danced barefoot in the rain on your 40th birthday. The one who said, 'If the world's already wet, you might as well move with it.' I hope you've kept dancing. And if not, well, it's never too late." I put the letter down and felt something soft and old press into my chest. Not sadness, not quite nostalgia. Just recognition. I had forgotten that woman. She wasn't a fantasy or a version of myself from a dream. She was real. She had lived here once, in this body, with these hands. And I had buried her under years of, "Is dinner ready?" And can you pick up the kids? And you're just being sensitive, Mom. I stood up, crossed the kitchen, and opened the drawer where I kept old dish towels. At the very back, folded tight, was a CD Sophie had burned for me years ago. Grandma's Jazz, written in silver marker. I didn't even know if it would play anymore, but I pulled out the old stereo, dusted it off, and tried. It crackled, then caught. Nina Simone's voice filled the room, low and deep, like honey turning on a spoon. I stood by the window, arms crossed, just listening. Then I let myself sway. Just a little. The floor creaked beneath me, and my knees didn't love the movement, but I moved anyway. In my socks, with no one watching, with no performance required. It wasn't dancing, not really. But maybe it was close enough. I wrote Helen back that same afternoon. I told her, "Thank you for remembering, for seeing, for naming the version of me I had forgotten." I told her about Emma, about Sophie, about the roast I carried out the front door like an offering to my old self. I didn't mention Monica. I didn't need to. I ended the letter with a line she had once said to me after I spilled coffee on a new dress and nearly cried over it. "You're allowed to be messy. Just don't pretend it's someone else's mess." I had never forgotten that, even if I forgot everything else. When I walked to the mailbox, the wind picked up. Cold and fast, but not punishing. The lemon tree print fluttered slightly when I came back inside. I touched the frame lightly. "I remember you," I said quietly. And I did. Sophie came over on a Friday. No warning, no text. Just a soft knock and her face behind the frosted glass. "I brought mushrooms," she said, holding up a brown paper bag. "And those little onions you like." "I was just about to make soup," I said. "Perfect. I'll chop." We didn't rush. The kitchen wasn't large, but we moved around each other easily. I showed her where I kept the knives, still sharp, still familiar. She peeled onions with practiced hands, eyes watering from the sting. "I forgot how strong these are," she muttered. "That's how you know they're honest," I said. She laughed and wiped her eyes. I cleaned the mushrooms gently with a towel. No soaking, no shortcuts. She watched for a moment, then copied me. "Mom always scrubs them under the faucet," she said. "Your mother never had patience for mushrooms." Sophie didn't argue. She just nodded. We worked in comfortable quiet, broken only by the bubbling of the pot. The smell filled the apartment, earthy, savory, warm. She found bowls in the cabinet without asking, set the table without fuss. When we sat down, neither of us reached for our phones. She tasted the soup and closed her eyes. "God, Grandma, this is perfect." I smiled. "It's just soup." "No," she said. "It's yours. That's the difference." We ate slowly. She dipped her bread into the broth and let it soak before each bite. When the bowls were nearly empty, she looked up. "Do you think I'll end up like her?" There was no bitterness in her voice. Just the question, bare and genuine. "No," I said. "You already asked the question she never could." Sophie played with her spoon. "She's trying again, sending messages, telling me she wants to talk." "Do you want to?" She thought for a long moment, then shook her head. "Not right now. I just don't trust what she wants." "You don't know her more than you have to give." She looked relieved. Not because I gave her permission, but because I said it out loud. After dinner, we washed dishes together. She dried, I rinsed. "I like it here," she said. "It feels honest." "That's the second time you've used that word tonight." "Yeah," she said, smiling. "I think I'm craving it." When we finished, she didn't rush to leave. She wandered into the living room and sat on the floor with her back against the couch. I joined her. "I used to think you were just quiet," she said. "But now I think you were just careful." I nodded. I had to be. Why? Because when you grow up in a world that doesn't ask what you think, you learn to watch first, to measure. And now I'm learning to answer before I'm asked. Sophie leaned her head back, resting it against the cushions. I want to be like that, she said. You already are. We sat a long while without talking. Eventually, she stood, pulled on her coat, and kissed my cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for all of this. Come back next week, I said. We'll try making a pie. Deal. After she left, I cleaned the counter, wiped the stove, and folded the dish towel over the sink. The apartment smelled like garlic and thyme, like effort and ease. I poured myself a small glass of wine and sat by the window. Outside, a street lamp flickered. The air looked like velvet, thick, quiet, soft. I didn't think of Monica. I thought of Sophie. I thought of soup and salt and how some things, once tended properly, don't need saving. Just space and time. There's a moment just before dawn when the world holds its breath. The sky isn't light yet, but it isn't dark either. The shadows soften. Even the wind seems to pause. That's when I like to walk now. Just a short loop down to the corner, past the bakery that opens too early, then back again. The air is crisp and the sidewalks are still damp from the night. Sometimes I see Ruth from down the hall. She walks slower these days, but she still waves. The morning I turned 81, I found a small note taped to my door. Happy birthday, Betty. You remind me who I want to become. No name, but I knew it was Sophie. I didn't need flowers or fanfare. That note was enough. I made myself pancakes that morning. Just two, with a little butter, a drizzle of syrup, and half a banana. I ate them slowly at the table, sunlight warming the floor by my feet. Later, I opened the drawer where the binder lived. I hadn't touched it in weeks, but I pulled it out, placed it on the table, and added one last letter. Short, clear, folded once. It read, Sophie, what I have is yours. Not because of blood, but because of kindness. You never tried to manage me. You just met me where I stood. That's love. That's legacy. Don't let anyone teach you otherwise. I placed it behind the will and closed the binder. That afternoon, I sat on the small balcony and watched the light move across the street. Nothing extraordinary happened. A mail truck passed. A boy on a bicycle wobbled past, his backpack nearly tipping him over. The world, unbothered by my peace, kept going. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for understanding, not for the version of motherhood I never got to grow into. I had enough. I had Sophie. I had mornings and music and the scent of soup simmering just for me. Sometimes healing isn't a wave that crashes over you. It's a quiet return to yourself. And if you've been reading this, if you've ever felt small in a house you helped build, or quiet in a life you once led loudly, let this be your permission slip. You don't need anyone's blessing to come back to yourself. You just need to begin. So begin now. And if this story found you, share it. Leave a comment below. Pass it to another woman who needs reminding. Your worth was never up for debate. What do you think? Was Betty right to walk out with that roast? Or should family loyalty come first regardless of how you're treated? And here's the question that might make you uncomfortable. How many times have you stayed quiet when someone treated you poorly just to keep the peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to tell me where you're watching from around the world.